Welcome to episode 74 of the Toadstool Boardroom for the week of January 19th, 2024. My name's Logan Plant, and I'm joined, as always, by Justin Corice.
What's up, Logan?
And we're also joined by a slightly sick but recovering Chris Schreiber. Hi, Chris.
Hello, everyone. I apologize in advance for any coughs and or nose blowing that may happen if I accidentally forget to mute at any point in this show.
It's quite all right. Glad you're back with us this week. First episode of 2024.
That's right.
Do you have any Nintendo predictions of your own to kick off the year because you missed our prediction show last week?
Oh, that's right. I feel like this is going to be a year where we finally see a Donkey Kong game that isn't Mario versus Donkey Kong.
I was going to say, I feel like we already have one.
Yeah. I feel like we have to see Metroid Prime 4, right? In some capacity, whether or not that means it's on Switch or a new console. I would love to see a new console this year. I could also see Nintendo telling everybody to pound sand and not showing us a new console this year. I feel like those are all very safe guesses at this point.
Well, I've got one more to throw on the fire
from
last week that I skipped. That is a prediction I've made. I think this will be the third year in a row I've made it, but I'm going to make it until it comes true. And that's Xenoblade Warriors. I'm really tired of predicting this, but I really think it's going to happen. I think that we'll get another Warriors game with Omega Force and Nintendo collaborating this year. The last one was in 2022, and that was Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, and I think Xenoblade makes a ton of sense, and maybe it could be in the launch lineup. That could work. I could see a Warriors game fitting in a launch lineup for some new hardware, so I meant to throw that one out last week, but I missed it.
I played it. That sounds great.
We were making. Yeah, they have 3 games of characters to pull from now, the Torna DLC, and yeah, that could be cool. That could be really, really cool. We'll see about that. But let's get into our main topics for this week. We're going to be talking about Mario vs. Donkey Kong a little bit later, and some new content coming to that game and how we feel about its price tag now. We're going to answer a ton of questions in EGAD's emails that we didn't get to last week, as well as a few new ones. But let's start with a review of the first-party Nintendo game of 2024, and that is Another Code: Recollection. I have been playing this. I finished both games included in the Another Code Recollection, and I'm here to share my impressions. First of all, though, Chris, you mentioned that you were picking this up. Do you have experience with Trace Memory, the game that this is based on?
I don't have any experience with anything in this franchise. It just seemed like it was an off-the-wall title for coming from first-party Nintendo, kind of akin to like Famicom Detective Club.
Totally.
I didn't play those games, excuse me, but those, I feel like me 5 years prior to their release would have loved them. I was a big like Danganronpa fan on the Vita when those came out, but I haven't really played a visual novel in a really long time, probably since those games, honestly. And it kind of gave me Professor Layton vibes, which you and I were talking about the other night. It seems like it's less that and more visual novel. But yeah, I think the uniqueness is kind of what kind of is drawing me to it at this point. It's just different from a lot of the other. I feel like I spent a lot of, not that I played a lot of games in 2023, but I spent a lot of 2023 playing a lot of RPGs. And I kind of see that continuing a little bit. Going into at least the first half of 2024, wrapping up some of the stuff that I had started but didn't necessarily finish last year. So this seemed like it was a good title, just that was a little bit different from what I had been playing before.
And Justin, I'll go out on a limb and say this is not your type of game.
This is not for me.
Yeah. I don't really know who it's for, having finished it, unfortunately. I did not love this game a lot. I did like it. I liked it more by the end than I did by the start. So first, I do want to go through just a little bit of background of what these games are, because they are really niche. I think it is one of the most niche things Nintendo has put out on Switch or anywhere in a very long time. I think that Famicom Detective Club is a great comparison to make, because it's this really old visual novel mystery story that in some capacity never came to North America. And that is kind of the same thing that we're getting here. So Trace Memory was the DS game that was the first game in the Another Code series. That's its North American name. Its European name and Japanese name is Another Code 2 Memories. And that came out on the DS. Its Wii sequel is called Another Code R, Journey into Lost Memories. And that never came to North America. That came to Japan and came to Europe, but the NOA did not go for that one, probably because the original sold so incredibly poorly on DS. So Reggie or whoever it was at the time making those decisions passed on it. And these were developed by Japanese developer Sing, who also made Hotel Dusk, which is a really great series of detective adventure mystery games on DS. Again, only the first one of those came to North America, and its sequel came to Europe and came to Japan, but we never got it. So a very similar situation with those two series. But this studio went bankrupt in 2010, and Nintendo, who published Another Code and Hotel Dusk, retained the rights to all of these games. And I never thought we'd see them again. We got a Spirit in Super Smash Bros. For Ashley, the main character, and I thought that's as far as it was going to go. But here it is in 2024, kicking off the year. Full-blown remake of these two titles. Nintendo's still not saying who made them. They still, just like Super Mario RPG, they're not telling us who developed this remake, which is really interesting. But anyways, I've played both of them, and I'm pretty mixed on them. I thought it was going to be more Layton-like before I jumped in, but it's not. I think the closest comparison is probably something like Life is Strange. You've got a angsty teenage girl as your protagonist. There's some supernatural leanings in the plot. You play from this third-person perspective in these explorable areas, but there's really not that much to explore. You walk up to objects, you examine them. There's a line of dialogue from the protagonist about what she thinks of this book on the table, or how this house looks, or how pretty the water is, or something like that. And it's a pretty linear story that you go through. It's not quite as mature as Life is Strange. It's a little bit more aimed, I think, towards young adult than the Life is Strange series, which are pretty much all rated M. This is rated T. And the puzzles are just so simple. I was looking forward to some meaty brain teasers, and they're just incredibly easy. It's seriously like plug in the orange key to the orange slot, or press the buttons that appear on screen in the order they appear on screen, or tilt this ball through the tilt maze with motion controls, and the motion controls are not good. They are really bad. Fortunately, there's only 2 or 3 motion puzzles in the entire game, and you do have an option in the menu to skip puzzles if you'd like, but the motion controls, when they're there, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to do this again. They're just really not that responsive. So I was initially disappointed at the puzzles, and that's when it clicked that it was more just about going through the narrative, and I was like, okay. But then the narrative's not that great either. It's kind of a shame. It's the first game specifically, which is Another Code 2 Memories. It is so predictable. There's only like 6 characters in the entire game, so it's really easy to figure out who the antagonist is. And also it deals with my least favorite trope in media, which is amnesia. I can't stand amnesia plots, and pretty much both of these games are entirely amnesia plots, so that might just be on me. Some people could probably get more out of the amnesia part of it than I will, but yeah, you can tell this was a DS game that has been remade for a home console just by the scope of it and the amount that's going on.
I don't know.
The sequels...
Sorry. I don't know if you'll be able to speak to it at all, but I remember when The World Ends With You was ported to Switch, a lot of people had said that, I mean, myself included, because I only played the demo, I didn't play the full release, but do you think this game is better on DS because it's like more designed around that kind of control scheme with the touch screen and everything, and like there's something lost in that translation to Switch?
So this is where things get really interesting, is that this game is entirely remade. We talk about Nintendo remakes sticking really close to the source material and just updating them visually and maybe making them a bit more approachable or accessible in specific ways. But this Another Code Recollection is basically just taking the bones of the original from a plot and a scenario standpoint and redoing everything around it. The puzzles are entirely new for this game.
Oh.
I watched some gameplay of the original Trace Memory and the Wii one on YouTube just to see how different they were, and I was shocked. at how different they are from what I played. They are completely different games. Same characters, same locations, mostly the same plot, although that's not really true about the second game. The plot in the second game is a lot different than it was originally, which is interesting. But the DS game actually had this really cool puzzle where you need to fold the hinge on your DS so the top screen is reflecting on the bottom screen, and it forms a word with what's displaying on the top screen and what's displaying on the bottom screen. Like super cool stuff with the hardware that they obviously couldn't do here on Switch, so they just scrapped all of that and unfortunately replaced it with really generic, almost mobile game feeling adventure game puzzles. So it's kind of a shame in that respect. I feel like there might be some more charm in the original version than there was here. So yeah, the puzzles, maybe they could use the Switch hardware in a more interesting way, or just been more complex, but they're just not. So I don't know. Maybe the original is more interesting in that way.
This almost sounds like one of those games that 5 or 10 years from now, when people are going back and they're trying to like collect for a Switch library, it'll end up being like $600.
It's gonna be hard to find one.
Because like they didn't make that many, and it's actually a bit like Devil's Third. Like Devil's Third is not a good game on the Wii U, but that's like a $500 game now or something like that.
Yeah, it is. It's one that I'm still missing from my complete Wii U collection of the games Nintendo published. I don't have that one, and there's no way I'm ever going to buy it. But yeah, I feel I'm sounding really down on this game, and I mostly am. I don't think it's bad. I think it's okay. I think there is some stuff that it does well. I think the presentation is mostly nice. When you're talking to other characters, you're in kind of these like manga style comic panels, and like whoever's talking, they're like highlighted, and then it's like switching back and forth between who's highlighted and who's speaking in the conversation. So that's kind of interesting. And the story in the second game, I actually did enjoy. And when it was over, I was a little bit bummed that it was done, because I was like, I kind of really liked the main character. I really like Ashley. I think she's a good protagonist. I think that she's like, I don't know, she's like mature beyond her years. She's only 14 in the first game and 16 in the second game. But I just really like a lot of her attitude towards things and how well she takes care of the people in her life and other characters around her. Like, I like some of that stuff, but just the mystery driving it all. I will hold every mystery story to the benchmark of Ace Attorney, and this just doesn't even come close. Like, there's no mystery here. It's super predictable and really tropey in ways, and that was just kind of disappointing. But the second game has about 20 characters instead of the 6 characters in the original, and there's side plots going on, and you learn who these people are and their motivations, and it's definitely better. But something I wanted to bring up is that the Wii version of the second game takes 18 hours to beat, and I beat it in 8 hours in this remade version. So they have cut over half of this thing out, which is crazy. And one of the big criticisms of the original Wii version is that it drags on too long and is way too wordy. So maybe they just cleaned that up. I wouldn't know because it never came here, but I just thought that was kind of crazy. The first one's how long to beat for the DS version is 5 hours. It's the same here. I beat it in 5 hours, and I was like, okay, I'm very glad that this is a 2-pack, and I'm going to get to jump into this 18-hour sequel that was originally on a home console and is much more ambitious. And then I beat that in 8 hours, and I was like, wow, I am a little stunned at how quickly I wrapped that up for a $60 game. I was honestly a little bit surprised by it. I still liked the second one, but I was just a little bit surprised by its length. So I think this is really for people who played Trace Memory on DS and you want to play the sequel, or you want to play this game you played when you were younger. I honestly don't recommend it to adventure game fans. There's so much else out there. Like Life is Strange is better than this. Visual novels like Ace Attorney is better than this. Danganronpa is all on Switch and is better than this. Like, yeah, I'm super happy this exists because it's giving a physical release to a series that had kind of been lost to time and had never been here in its sequel capacity, but it's just not great. I think it's okay. I would score it as okay if I were to give it an official score.
Well,
yeah, that's it. Any questions you guys have? Or
I don't know that I'm going to keep my pre-order on it. I'll say that after everything that I've just heard. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, as someone who is as limited in their time to play games, like, I'm out.
Although, may not take that much time.
May not take that much time.
That's true. I will also say I click through text really fast in adventure games. Like I don't know about you guys, but most of it is fully voiced. The voice acting is not very good in English, but most of it is fully voiced. And I always click through and interrupt and cut sentences off halfway in these games. I don't ever let the full voice read. I don't know if you guys do that, but the playtime, I probably shaved a few hours off by how fast I click through text in adventure games like this.
I mean, I think for me it depends on the game. I like Danganronpa, I mostly let them play out, but like when I did Digimon, I was speeding through it. So it kind of depends.
Oh, that's another visual novel that's probably better than this one. That is
on Switch. For sure.
Digimon Survive.
It's legitimately good. So
you're gonna say something, Kristen?
Yeah, so I was gonna ask, like, in terms of like the actual like gameplay, outside of just reading text, like what's that actually look like? How do you do puzzles? How do you interact with that?
Yeah, so it's a fully interactable 3D environment. You are controlling Ashley from a third-person perspective, and you're running around. The first one's entirely in a mansion. And you'll enter a new room, and you'll just walk up to the desk, and you'll click A on the desk. It'll go into kind of that traditional first-person adventure game, detective game view, like a Nancy Drew view. And you have your little cursor on screen, and you examine everything on the desk. When you're done there, you hit B, you back out. You're back as Ashley in the room. You go to the next spot. When a puzzle starts, it always like wipes. There's like a notebook page that flashes over the screen, with like her sitting there looking all pensive, like she's about to solve a puzzle. And then it's usually a first-person view, and it's like, okay, plug in this locker combination, or reroute these wires, or find the thing on this desk that we need to progress. And they're always very simple. And then conversations are that kind of manga style comic panel I was talking about. And sometimes somebody will say something, it'll be highlighted in green. When they're done talking, you then go back to your menu of conversation topics, just like in Ace Attorney or something like that. You pick the next one you want to talk about, and you go from there. But there's never really a choice. There's usually only one or two conversations at a time that you're picking between. But that's pretty much it. It is very simple. I could see people liking just how chill it is. It's just a very non-resistant game. It's very easy to play, and even if you do get stuck on a puzzle, there's this really genius 3-tiered hint system where the first one is a hint, and it tells you, oh, you might need to look at this desk. Then the detailed hint will be like, look at this area of the desk. And then part 3 is the answer, and it's like, click on this and then do this with it. So this is a completely optional system you can turn off in the settings. But I had it on the whole time since I was playing through, and I wanted to get it done before the podcast. And I did end up using it once that I actually needed the answer. So there was one time where I was like, I don't really get what it wants me to do here. But looking back on it, I feel like that was not because the puzzle was difficult, but because it wasn't designed that well. So that's not really a credit to that puzzle either. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is kind of the gameplay of it all. And not the deepest. It's sad. I wanted to come on here and love this game because I love that they made this. I love they returned to this series. I wanted to recommend it so people would pick it up, and maybe Hotel Dusk could come back or something like that. But I can't really recommend it unless you're just a huge adventure game fan, or if you've been curious about this sequel we never got. But then the story's not even the same in that one as the sequel we never got. It's a redone story. So it's interesting. It's a pretty interesting one. At the end of the day, it was just okay. I'm glad I played it, but it's not one that I think a lot of people would be happy to drop on. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions you guys have about this one before we move on? That's it. Yep, so not the best start to Nintendo's publishing year, unfortunately. Again, it's not bad. I didn't hate it. I kind of liked the second game. I did enjoy it. The story did it had one twist that actually got me in the second game. And I was like, wow, that is a fairly interesting place they went with this. But I would say wait for a sale. But will this game ever really go on sale? I don't know. So we'll see. I think that if you played the original on DS, you'll like the nostalgia of revisiting it because it looks pretty nice in its cutscenes and the characters look nice. So yeah, but if you haven't played these, there's better stuff out there for you. Even all the Life is Strange games are on Switch, and those are pretty much all great. So that is another Code Recollection, Nintendo's January game. Let's talk about Nintendo's February game, which is Mario vs. Donkey Kong. Nintendo put out a press release earlier this week saying that Mario vs. Donkey Kong is getting 2 new worlds and more features in the remake that's coming out in February. The two new worlds are called Merry Miniland and Slippery Summit. We're also getting a time attack mode. There's plus levels and expert levels, but I looked into it. Those are in the original version, so that's not new, but more difficult versions of the levels that you get after completing the base level. A 2-player mode, we already knew that. Player 2 will get to be Toad. And there's a casual and classic mode. Classic mode is one hit and you're dead. Casual mode is if you get hit, you get put in a bubble and you kind of get floated back to the most recent checkpoint of the level. And casual also deactivates the timer. So you don't have a time limit when you're going through these levels. All in all, there's going to be over 130 levels in this thing. And Chris, you've been critical of the $50 price tag on this thing. How do all these new features make you feel about it?
I think they definitely help. It's going to depend on. It's such a weird game to try and like quantify, how many hours you're going to end up putting into it because of the way that like it is like over 130 levels. You could, in theory, play those 2, 3, 4 times if you play every single mode. If you play it in co-op mode as well, like if you're checking every one of those boxes, then like sure. I would say that's a justifiable price tag. I think when it becomes a hard pill to swallow is, what's interesting is I feel like I didn't feel this way about Super Mario RPG. Like this is a game that could have been just dropped on NSO and ever like nobody would have been the wiser. I think people would probably be a little more receptive of it. Not that I think people are like offended by it right now, but I think it would be the type of game that people would be excited to play on NSO without like all the HD dress up and all that. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're looking at it from like an inflation perspective, like this game probably released at $40 when it came out on GBA. Now that it's at $50, we're doing that like $60 to $70 price hike at this point. I guess it's fine. We made a joke in our Discord of, oh man, they're adding 2 more worlds. Like all right, cool. 2 more hours of content that they're adding on top of the 5 to 7 hour experience that the original one has. And maybe more people, some people will get more out of it than that. I doubt I'll be that person. I'll probably just play it either on casual, like dad mode, or if I really get into it, then the expert levels. But I doubt that'll happen. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, I'm always hesitant to equate the length of a game with the value of a game because I don't think those things necessarily have to be related. At the same time, though, it is. Like not to poo-poo this game, but as somebody who's hasn't played it before and is like not super interested in it, it strikes me as kind of the platforming puzzle equivalent of like crossword puzzles. Just a bunch that if you like the action of it and working through that, you'll enjoy it. But nobody's selling you a book of crossword puzzles for $50, presumably.
Yeah, like. Sorry, real quick. Like I would almost equate it to like Bridge Constructor Portal, if you guys have seen those games, like or World of Goo. Like these are games that are like $5 to $10. Angry Birds was $1.99 on the App Store. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
Angry Birds comes to mind.
Yeah, it's that kind of DNA. And to charge $50 for it at this point, when you look at other types of content that are similar to it, like today, it is a little offensive when you look at it through that lens.
Yeah, and so Logan mentioned that we're up to 130 plus levels now. Approximately how long is a level? Like that sounds like a lot, but if it's just a quick, short burst of action, I don't know that
1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah,
for a level.
At least the first probably 2 or 3 worlds is probably about 2 to 3 minutes, and then it gets progressively harder. Obviously,
honestly, it's a bit of a bummer because like I like the idea of returning to like classic. Jumpman style Mario facing off against Donkey Kong. Like the art style is really cute. I love the little like Mario minifigs with their little Lego hands and things like that. I just don't want to drop $50 on it. That's my biggest hang up. That's like that is what's going to stop me from picking this up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I look at what Nintendo used to put out on like the 3DS eShop, and Box Boy was like $4. And I think that is a really good comparison to this. The Box Boy plus Box Girl they put out on Switch, I think, was $20. And that has a ton of puzzles, probably over 100, and kind of similar in that slower paced puzzle platforming. Now, granted, the visual style is a lot simpler and easier to develop for sure in Box Boy than Mario versus Donkey Kong with all these backgrounds that they've got going on and just a lot more kind of artistic variety. But I am surprised by the $50 price tag. I think that I could have stomached 40 a lot better. I think that maybe we aren't having this conversation quite as much if this is a $39.99 title. I think these are great ads, though. I think that 2 Extra Worlds is exciting. We didn't know that ahead of time. I think it would have been nice if maybe they included that in the announcement of this game. I think it's weird they waited until now to kind of drop that. Time Attack, I'm never super into Time Attack modes, but I know there's some people that are. I think 2-player is great, and I think the inclusion of a casual mode is a nice ad, too. So it's not like, I don't know, it's not like Tropical Freeze, where they added Funky Kong mode, raised the price by $10 and walked away. Like they put a lot of effort, I think, into cleaning this thing up, and the graphics are completely redone. Like Justin said, I think it looks really nice. And for me, I look at this gameplay style and I think this is really up my alley. I think that's something I'm going to be into. I've never played this game. I've played Donkey Kong 94 on the Game Boy, but I never played the GBA one. So I'm super excited to dive into this one. And for me, 50 is a little bit steep, but I'm willing to look past it because I think we're going to get probably a pretty good game. I think that this game was reviewed really well when it came out. This is a well-received puzzle platforming game. Yeah, it's a little pricey. $50 it's tough because you ask yourself, is that $10 off or $20 off a standard AAA game now? Because it's all over the place. Like, pricing is everywhere between $60 and $70. So I don't know the answer to that, but I think that they're adding a lot here that I no longer think it's offensive to charge $50 for this with how much they've added to it. I guess I think it's fine. I think people have charged $70 for much worse products than this is going to end up being. So I think it'll end up being okay, but I do think it'll hurt their sales. I mean, they have people that look into this, obviously, and know way more than I do about it, but I think a $30 game, drop that on the eShop, I think a lot of people would have bid. Justin, $30, would you have picked this up when it came out? No? Okay, he wouldn't have.
20 would be enough to get me. Again, for something that strikes me as just like a light collection of simple puzzles, I think that's as high as I would find justified for my personal taste. I'm also not a huge puzzle game guy necessarily, so like, I think if you're an enthusiast for this type of game and for this property, like, again, like, that's where justifying like dollars and cents can be tough because it really does depend a lot on you, what that $50 means to you, and what your particular interests are. But I do think for just a general consumer, I think $50 for this is a real tough sell.
Yeah, like I almost have to equate it to like if you look at something like Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon, that like I think that released at either $20 or $25, and like obviously they don't have like the like. Jakob Games doesn't have the gravitas that Nintendo does. Like they're not even close. But I feel like that's the only reason that they're kind of getting away with this is because, and I mean the sales number will speak to it. Like you said, like either people are going to be fine with this and pick it up, or they're not, and then Nintendo's going to go, wow, geez, we really should have made it. And then they'll launch like the Nintendo Switch Selects line, and this will be in it, and it'll be $20 or whatever, $30.
This will be the cornerstone of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because it is, and don't get me wrong, like it's a great game. Like Mario vs. Donkey Kong is one of the best games on the GBA, but like, yeah, I can't wrap my head around why they think this is okay. I mean, I guess just because it has Mario, like they're reanimating it and all that. Like it is polished. It's a polished product, but yeah, to Justin's point, like there's plenty of indie titles and stuff like that come out for way less, that have way more content in them.
I guess what do you mean by why do they think it's okay? Like they don't owe us anything with their pricing. It's up to each individual person if they're willing.
No,
to do
it is.
So yeah,
it's more just like. I'm starting to look at, and I think a lot of it's probably because I've been spending so much time looking at like pricing on the Steam store over the past year. Yeah. And the number of titles that I get for literally like dollars, like single digit dollars. And just like how much is in some of those titles. When you see a game like this come along, and because it's first party, all of a sudden now they get to charge $50 for it. Like, we really don't see Nintendo charge less than $40 ever at this point. And you almost have to wonder, like, would they? Is it worth them developing games like this at a lesser price tag, or forcing us to continue to pay the Nintendo tax? Like, I don't know. It's just like a lot of their titles rarely go on sale. Like, I feel like I'm rambling, but
I will say there's a couple examples of them going under 40. Everybody Won 2 Switch, that fantastic game. They charged $29.99.
Yeah, I paid $30 for it, and I would have been upset if I paid $10. Like, that game was terrible. Like.
No, it's fair. It's. Yeah, I just think it gets tricky when you get into the discussion of, like, how dare they? Because it's like they're a business at the end of the day. They're going to charge what they want to charge, and you don't have to buy it if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And a lot of people won't. I think, like Justin was saying, this is a tough sell to a lot of people. But somewhere in some office building in Japan, they had this discussion of this, price, how the premium price for fewer consumers or a lower price for more consumers. And this is the target they landed on for this one. And we've seen them be flexible in their games. There's been $40 games. There's been $70 games. Most of them come out at $60. And I guess this one, they think they can squeeze enough people out at $50. I would have loved to see it at $40, like I said. Yeah. I think that would have been perfect for something like this. Like, it feels like a 3DS title to me. And 3DS games were $39.99. And those were great price points for those. But that's just not what they're choosing to do. And it hurts a little bit. It does sting the wallet. And like you said, you're a Steam Deck player now, and you see the Steam sale, and they're crazy, but it's just a different ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's what works for them.
Interestingly enough, I feel like this release would have made more sense had they released this game would have made more sense at this price had they released it in November. As like this is such an easy, I need a Christmas gift for Jimmy. What's the new random Mario title that's out there? Like, it's such an easy sell in that light.
The one more thing,
right? Like Uncle Joe needs to give him something. Like, oh, there's a new Mario game, just go get that. Like, that would have made so much more. And granted, like, if it wasn't ready, it wasn't ready. But like, that would have made way more sense than releasing it in February, before when we expect a new console is going to be launching at the end of this year. Like, you're setting this game up to be a Black Friday bargain bin title in November of this year because of when they're releasing it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you can see this hitting $25 on Wario 64.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and then people buy it then. Yeah, I could 100% see that. And then something else I think, though, and this is not a fully formed opinion. It's just something that popped into my head now, which is I look at how much Sony is struggling, or how much Xbox is struggling with revenue, and you see studios that are, I don't know, having to push out remaster after remaster and charge a full $70 for them, looking at you, Naughty Dog, or looking at studios that are struggling to get games out at all. And I can't help but think Nintendo's got a sustainable business in a very questionable time for the industry. And I think maybe their most hardcore enthusiast fans picking up a game like this maybe helps fund their development for other games that take 6 or 7 years to come out and make. So it definitely, I think there's some pros to it. As a Nintendo fan, it's like, if you want them to continue making, not going the live service route, not pumping out remaster after remaster, I guess this is a remake, but I think it kind of makes sense maybe to buy, not necessarily you have to buy them, but it's good that there are people out there that will buy this to keep the lights on at Nintendo. Not like they're struggling, but they were for a time, and I think that they've got it figured out like other companies don't. I don't know if this makes any sense, but
no, it does. It's like you want to contribute to the whole. Like, it's not like the situation that we were in at the end of the Wii U life cycle, where there's literally nothing. And
so you bought everything.
Right. Yeah. You bought anything they put out just because it's like, I can't let Nintendo die, you know. Yeah, that's not the situation we're in now.
Yeah, so if I buy this for $50, then I'm doing all you a favor. It's the joking way of what I'm saying. Not really. But I don't know, Justin, that make any sense to you? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's it's not as though like we have any particular responsibilities to make their product successful. Our job really is to consume what appeals to us. And I think that something like this, especially in the context of other games that you can get for better prices, I don't think it's the most appealing package. But I do agree with your point earlier, though, in terms of the price point, that like these things, like people don't just like write down and guess a number. Like there's actually pretty substantial like sales apparatus that does projecting and forecasting and puts a lot of careful thought into it. If they're releasing at $50, that doesn't mean that they might not get it wrong, but it's not something that they do willy nilly. There's a model that leads to that. I do think maybe they got it wrong on this one, though.
Yeah. To be clear, I was not saying it's your job to buy this game so Nintendo stays alive or makes more money. I was saying that games like this, people will buy them, and that does help Nintendo's business when the rest of the industry is, I think, grappling.
We'll see if people buy this one.
I think people will. This will sell over 1 million.
Very interested in the sales numbers on this.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, we'll see. I say it'll crack 1 million. I think easy. I think anything with Mario does on Switch. I don't think there's a single one that hasn't.
I think sort of like what Chris was saying, there's enough uninformed aunties and uncles who will see a Mario game for little Jimmy's birthday and snatch it that they'll cross that mark. But I think tricking once removed relatives is their best marketing strategy for this one.
Yeah, wow, tricking. That big words from Justin there. But
you're right. Bamboozling. My mistake.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, let's stick on the topic of price here for a minute. And I've been thinking, kind of prepping for this $50 conversation this week. Well, Switch 2 games cost $70, and we still don't know anything about new hardware for Nintendo. But I've just been thinking about, we saw Zelda cost $70. It's the only one they've pushed the price point up so far of any game that they've released. We had a conversation on this show. I think that we were all okay with that for everything that game offered. We all landed, hey, that is fine for that one. But I'm a little worried if we get to Switch 2 and it's like, okay, the new Mario Tennis is $69.99. I think there's going to be a problem there. I think that is when games like this, kind of the mid-market Nintendo games, like a Mario versus Donkey Kong, that's when I will struggle to want to pick those up if those things cost $70. So Justin, I'll start with you. Do you think that we'll see a blanket upcharge to $70 for everything, or kind of a case-by-case basis like we've seen so far?
I mean, I think it's the latter. I think that, as evidenced by the preceding title, that they're open to making business decisions, adjusted based on the specific games. I do think that Tears of the Kingdom releasing at $70 does, I think, open the door to this more. And again, like what that extra $10 means differs a lot to a lot of people. I do think that the biggest obstacle it presents is a perception one, for like people's perceived value and perception that prices are continuing to go up and that they're maybe not necessarily getting as much value for their dollar. On the flip side, I don't care. I have no problem with games releasing at $70. I think that they are well justified. I am one of those people that is firmly in the camp that I want video games to take longer and cost more and be shorter.
Whoa! Then why are you so upset about Mario vs. Donkey Kong costing $50?
Well, on the flip side, like that also means I want them to be good, and and hopefully like they do. People have time to make what they want to make and achieve their creative vision and do so in an environment that is better for the developers. And so, like, I have no problem if titles can be $10 more and they can get away with selling fewer copies and still be considered a success or something like that, then I think that that's frankly a good thing for the industry. And especially because Nintendo doesn't use discs, they use a more expensive media. There's a million reasons why it makes sense to me for these things to be more expensive. Again, I think there are drawbacks that are perception based, and like that $10 actually can mean a lot to people in different situations. As somebody in games media, frankly, I just have a budget for that stuff. Like it's a big part of my annual expense, so it's kind of accounted for. But just like in terms of like how I feel individually, like I don't have a problem with that at all.
How about you, Chris?
I feel like it's going to end up happening with like the big heavy hitter titles, your Mario, Metroid Prime 4, whatever the next Zelda ends up being. I could see them doing it for like anything that they think is like a substantial tentpole. We feel that the Animal Crossing, like anything that they think is like this is a pillar of Nintendo. Like I don't see another code getting, charging $70.
That one maybe shouldn't have been $60, guys. That one maybe should have been $49.99.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Like I feel like it's more that we're getting into. I think the spectrum is getting wider in terms of like what is feasible to charge a consumer. Based on the title and based on what the publisher thinks, their game is worth. Like, we were kind of saying earlier, like, I think there are definitely instances where, they could release something on the eShop for $5, $10, and, that'd be totally acceptable. Suika Game, I mean, not that that was Nintendo, but Suika Game, $3. Like, there are simple games like that. But like, I wasn't offended when Tears of the Kingdom was $70. I'm more offended by a $70 title on another console for a game that is either a remaster that already has an HD or already has an upgrade path to play at 60 frames at 1440p. Last of Us Part 2. I understand that you can upgrade for $10 for the PS5 version.
You couldn't for Part 1 though. That was worse. Part 1 was a worse situation.
Well, Part 1 was like a total rebuild though. Like I get that one more. Because like it was a total graphical overhaul. Part 2 is like it's so minute. Even Digital Foundry's like, we don't know why they made this. Other than adding additional modes and some extra content. But anyway, no, I think it really depends on the experience. But like honestly, this is something, and Justin probably remembers better than either of us do, Logan, but like back in the 90s, like this was very common on the Super Nintendo. Like if you look at those old Toys R Us ads, there are plenty of titles that they released at $80, $90 in the 90s, which is like
or
more, which is like you're talking like over $100 for a single video game. That was not uncommon at that time. And I think we have been very spoiled as consumers in terms of like what we've been able to pay for certain titles. I think there are certain publishers that like you kind of know that you can get away with waiting it out for 6 months. Ubisoft, right? Like nobody ever buys Assassin's Creed day one. If you do, you're a fool. Like give it until December 15th.
Prince of Persia.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, and all it is with them is a waiting game. Like, it's okay. They hit their target numbers and they want to get more people in. So, like, unfortunately, I think where it gets unfortunate is with Nintendo. They don't tend to do that often. There's only really a handful of times of the year where you're going to see a significant discount on a first-party Nintendo title, and I think. Like we said, like if you're somebody that your budget is limited, or you're running on a pretty tight budget, like you have to be very selective. So like if I'm somebody that I can pick one game and it's Mario vs. Donkey Kong or Mario Odyssey and Zelda, and I pick Mario vs. Donkey Kong to spend my shekels on, like I'm going to be pretty upset. And maybe that's unfortunately up to the education of the consumer, but like I'm sure it happened when we were kids. Like there were definitely times where you walked into Toys R Us, your parents said you can pick one thing and you picked the wrong one. Like it's easier to not make that mistake now, but yeah, like people definitely have done it. So no, I mean, I think it makes sense for them to go the $70 route. It's just, I don't think they need to do it for every title, and I don't think they will.
Honestly, I think the ideal solution really is if they do go to largely a $70 like price point, but then they also do proper sales down the road. I think there's a great deal of us who are happy to be day one buyers and pay that full price, and then opening the door to folks who have to budget more carefully, or to people who will prioritize getting the most bang for their buck over being there on day one is kind of the best of both worlds. And I wish we would see something more like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think about that a lot. I think there's a lot of games that could greatly benefit from big sales. We saw Metroid Dread drop to $29.99 last Black Friday, and that was one of the biggest Black Friday sellers of the year because it's like, wow, finally I can play this 2-year-old game that I have not been able to afford to play or have just not wanted to spend that much on for a 2D platformer, Metroidvania, or whatever the reason is. And I think that yeah, we talk about Nintendo being for everybody, and a way to make that more true is to make it for everybody of different income levels and say, hey, maybe these games do go on sale. Do I think that's going to happen? No chance. This is how Nintendo's been forever, and I see them sticking with that. I don't think they owe us anything, just like we don't owe them anything, but it is disappointing that still Breath of the Wild is still $60. And you can find deals, you can get creative, but it is a shame that there's some people out there that are probably just sticking to the Steam store or to the eShop indies because they can't afford Pikmin 4, which people would fall in love with if they could play. But it will never drop.
Well, and it's a risk, right? Like you looking at somebody who's not a Pikmin fan or has never played a Pikmin game, it's like, wow, this is like wildly different. Do I really want to drop $60 on a game I might not like? Like that's a way tougher pill to swallow than
they do demos for that kind of thing. They do that, which is nice of them. That is a good step, I think, towards helping consumers be informed. Is hey, here's this demo before you drop $60, but then at the end of the day, it's still $60. Chris, I'm totally with you. I think I'm with both of you actually, case by case. I think Mario Kart 9 will be $70. That is a game that will sell gangbusters, and you will play for hundreds of hours, and it will be worth it. Smash Brothers, $70. 3D Mario, Zelda, yeah, those games will be $70. I think so, and I'm okay with that. Those really premium games, they've earned that. I think that's fine. You're getting a quality with those titles, but Mario Tennis, don't know why that's my example. That should not be a $70 game. Don't do it, Nintendo. Don't do it. You'll hear from us on this show. Let's get into our last topic of the show, which is EGAD's emails. You can always email the show, toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com, or find us on Twitter @toadstoolbr. Before we get into the emails, Justin, for the third week in a row, you've wanted to shout out this game, and finally we're getting to it. I'm not forgetting this time. So what do you want to shout out?
Yeah, so there's this game that came out originally on PC a while ago, hit the Nintendo Switch in December, called Terra Nil, and this game is freaking rad. It's $25. And as long as Mario vs. Donkey Kong, so take that for what you will. It was actually originally developed by a group of 3 people at like a game jam competition, and then it was picked up by the I want to make sure I get their name right, a South African studio called Free Lives. They're published by Devolver Digital, and it sells itself as a reverse city builder. So basically, you're dropped into a map that is largely destroyed, almost like post-apocalyptic. Usually like there's just dirt and everything is messed up, and your job actually is to terraform it, like return it back to sort of grass and nature and things like that. And you have to build certain structures, and it has a really cool economy of, you build this structure that grows like this plant, and then you can use seeds from this to build this more complex thing, and then you can build then that gets wind blowing, so you can build wind farms to get electricity, and then has a really cool like ramp up, and then to finish each map you have to tear all that out and leave a self-sustaining ecosystem behind. So if you've ever played something like SimCity, you want to do basically the reverse of it. That's what this is, and it's really well done. It's a lot of fun. It's extremely zen and chill. I played it on PC last year. I loved it. I highly encourage checking it out. And for $25, again, not to tell you what you should spend your money on, but this is a game that I give an emphatic thumbs up to.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen that one. It looks interesting. Not really my type of game, but it's one that's looked really cool. I have a couple friends that I think would be really
so cool. Rad.
I was looking at this morning. Like I almost bought it this morning. It's so funny that you brought this up.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Chris, you also had something you wanted to show off.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So my son James has what is I can only call a Fisher-Price Game Boy. So Fisher-Price makes this. If you're watching the video version, it's like a little plastic toy Game Boy looking guy. There's a cartridge sticking out, and if you press the cartridge in, it plays different songs. But what's funny is it plays like Nintendo Game Boy songs in like minor key, so that they don't like get a copyright strike. So like I'm gonna try playing one of them, and I don't know how it's going to come through, but you guys let me know if you can identify it. Oh wait, it's not on. Hold on.
I can't hear it.
Nope.
I can't hear it at all.
Didn't come
That's
through.
a shame.
Oh, that's a shame.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, you'll have to Google it or look it up on YouTube. It's this little blue game.
Tweet a video. Tweet a video of these.
Yeah, I'll tweet a video out from the Toadstool Boardroom account. But it yeah, like it'll play like Kirby's Adventure and like Minor Key and like The Legend of Zelda and Pokemon and like Jess was over in the playroom the other day with it and turned it on and I was like, that's this, and I just kept naming them like over and over again, and just thought it was super funny. They have the game controller as well that like I'm sure everybody's seen the Elden Ring one that people have modded, and you can like put the Konami code in that and like it does like the Mario coin if you do that, which is pretty funny.
Nice.
But yeah, Fisher Price. I don't know how they didn't get sued, but they didn't.
Seriously, because they flipped the A and B buttons just like Xbox did.
That's right.
That's how. Okay. Very nice show and tell, guys. Let's get into you guys' emails here. ToadstoolBoardroom@gmail.com. This first one comes from Blee, who asks, the first wireless charging road for electric cars was just opened in Detroit, and it reminds me an awful lot of the charging sections of Road in F-Zero. My question for the panel is, if you could choose any item from a Nintendo game to exist in real life, what would it be? Also, great call out on those electric roads. It is F-Zero in real life. It's outstanding. You guys have a pitch for an item in real life? I think that items, they'd just be dangerous. Right? Used by the wrong, like Cappy in the wrong hands would be a disaster. That would be horrible.
I thought Metroid or the Samus's power suit, but then I was like, I don't need a gun and missile launcher attached to my arm. Like I'm never going to use that. I also thought the wing cap, but then the idea of it disappearing and me crashing and breaking my neck on something is also terrifying.
I've always wanted, whenever I play Ocarina of Time, I always wish I had a hook shot. I think that the way he zips around with his hook shot is just so incredibly cool. I can't imagine the torque on the shoulder and the arm socket that he feels when he gets yanked up like that, but it would be pretty fun.
Imagine shooting that at the side of somebody's house. You're like, oh, I can get up there. And then,
yeah, it's a brutal weapon
all
too.
jacked up.
If you think about aiming that at somebody, see again, it'd just be too dangerous.
Yeah.
In real life. Justin, you have any picks?
Yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit. I also thought of like Samus's suit, but I was like, man, my back sounds like gravel when I stand up. Last thing I need is to actually go to morph ball mode and just never move again.
I want to see you go to morph ball mode.
Right? Awesome. Oh man, yeah. It would sound like Pop Rocks in a blender.
Oh no.
Honestly, I wish Pokeballs were a thing. I can think of so many fantastic uses for them, like not just for like animal fight clubs, because we wouldn't actually want to do that, but it's like, oh man, we're going on a trip, we got to bring the dog with us. I have a 110-pound lab, so it's like, boom, all right, Scout, get in. Now he's this big, he's this big, take him with me. Oh shoot, the cat got out, hold on, got it, all right. Oh no, there's a spider, what are we gonna do? What? All right, I'm going to let you outside. Get gone.
That's pretty great. Yeah.
So man, give me IRL Pokeballs. Like, oh man, there is a bear loose in the cul-de-sac of your town. No problem. Call in Pokeball guy. Boop. Oh shoot, he broke out. Run.
I wish it worked on humans, so then when it was time to fly across the country, you could just put me in a Pokeball and then put me on the plane, and then I could just be chilling in this digital landscape.
Dude, I got kids. If I could just pop, pop, all right, we're going on a road trip, and then just not have to hear them for a 4-hour drive. Oh, it'd be a dream. So that's what I want.
Again, a lot of potential for misuse with Pokeball in real life, but I like it. I like the idea. Chris, any others?
My mind went to a very dark place when you said that. Thinking I'm not even gonna go there. No, I can't think of any others.
Max Tomato from Kirby to instantly heal.
That one came to mind, but it was like, I guess what if I have COVID, I can eat a tomato and then I'm back to normal. Is that what we're doing? I mean, I wouldn't mind that.
I mean, that's kind of how vegetables work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I had an Apple, and that didn't,
adjusted time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question. I'll have to think more on that one. But yeah, hookshot is what I want just for myself because I wouldn't use it on anybody. I would just use it to zip around.
What if horses were real?
It would be awesome. What if horses were real? What if mushrooms were real? Super Mario. Sounds great. Yep. This next one comes from Tyler, who says, "Hey, boardroom members. I was curious about your guys' thoughts on print media and video games these days, such as strategy/walkthrough gaming guides and magazines. I know there's still a few magazines out there, but I was a big fan of Nintendo Power and hated to see them discontinue publication in 2012. Were any of you fans or subscribers of Nintendo Power back in the day?" Yes, I was for 8 years, I think, from 2004 to 2012. I was there at the end.
Amazing.
When they went out of print.
Huge fan. Never had the money to subscribe.
So where'd you read them? Like, were they on magazine stands?
Libraries.
There,
you can get old issues from libraries. And definitely read the entire thing at a magazine stand.
Yeah. Yes. How about you, Chris?
I had it for a few years, but like usually, I feel like it was like a birthday gift every now and then. And then if I didn't have it, if I went to the food store with my mom, like I would like beeline it to the magazine section, which like doesn't even exist anymore.
I'm sorry. Maybe this is just me being ignorant. Do you actually call it a food store, or do you call it a grocery store?
Yeah, this is a Northeast thing. So like we call it a food store.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I've never heard that before.
I had this conversation with somebody like a couple months ago, and they were like, "Why do you not call it a grocery store?"
Weirdo.
Yeah. You want to know another weird one is what do you order with pizza?
Breadsticks?
Breadsticks?
We get French fries with our pizza.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like every pizza place has French fries, and like a lot of people get them. But like,
I mean, that sounds rad.
When spin-off episode.
When Brian Barnett showed up to my house and like we got French fries with pizza, he looked at me like I had 10 heads. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "What do you mean? This is what we do."
Nice.
I'm with Brian on that one.
Anyway, sorry, you were talking about going to the food store.
Anyway, so the food store, Power. Like I remember the issue of Nintendo Power where they had the mock-ups of the like original Nintendo DS designs in them. And it was like it was whatever the code name was at the time, but like yeah, I would go and get like one-off issues here and there. I remember carrying around the Smash issue for Smash 64 with me like everywhere for like a month and a half when I was a kid.
The most influential issue of Nintendo Power on me was the let's see, what month was it? February 2012 issue, which was the Kid Icarus Uprising preview, and I read that thing like 15 times, and that worked out pretty well for me. Nintendo Power was awesome, but without it ending, I don't know if I'd be in this industry, because after Nintendo Power ended, I was like, I need to start finding some other sources for Nintendo news, and that led me to listen to a little podcast called Nintendo Voice Chat. So that was right after Nintendo Power ended. So thanks, Nintendo, for shutting that down, because here I am. What was that, Justin?
I said, do they still do that podcast?
The Nintendo Power podcast or Nintendo Voice?
No, NBC.
Nintendo Voice Chat.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were making a Nintendo Power podcast joke. I've never listened to a minute of that thing. I don't know if any of you have.
I didn't. No.
It's still going on. Yeah,
is it really?
I've heard it's very dry. Yeah, I think so.
Oh boy.
Maybe it ended.
But yeah, so back on subject though, I love print media. I frankly miss it. I wish there was a lot more of it. I will say, as I did have I was able to get like Game Informer subscription through GameStop growing up, and I will say that having like my own pieces show up in physical media was huge for me. Like I still have copies of them, and like that was a massive moment for me.
Yeah, I miss like manuals in games. I really miss a lot. I think.
I love great manuals. Yeah.
I hate a lot of fun to flip through that.
Yeah, like I still hate
reading them on the drive home.
Oh yeah.
Just get hyped.
Any manuals that like stick out in your head that you really remember that were great?
Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. There's an entire book at the front of it of like all the like backstory leading up to it, and it's really cool and really interesting about the sages and all that, and it really laid the groundwork for what would become like the core like Zelda narrative. Frankly, much more than Zelda 1 and 2 did. That's an amazing one.
Super Mario Brothers 2.
I love. Oh, what's in that one?
It mentions. I think it mentions that Birdo is transgender. And
that's right.
I'm trying to remember what else. There's like a whole plot.
The one for the original Super Mario Brothers is really dark because you find out that all the brick blocks are actually toads.
Oh, right. Yeah. And you're killing a toad every single time you jump and...
But in your defense, you do get like 1,000 points for it. So.
You do. So it's kind of worth
it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My favorite manuals were Melee and Brawl, where they have the movesets for every character that you start with, not the secret unlockable ones, but they're just so detailed. And the Brawl manual is thick. Like, it takes up a lot of the box. It's really thick.
I love when it's like kind of wedged in those little holders and you pull it out because it's good and thick. That's where it's at.
The rare ones on N64 are really good. Like, I mean, obviously impartial.
You like rare games?
Yeah, you like rare games? Me? No. No, I remember like the Donkey Kong 64 one and Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie. Those ones, like the detail that they had in about all the items and levels in those games, and like they had renders in there that like were really only present in those manuals. That was honestly the biggest thing. That and like the Primus strategy guides. They had been printing the Legend of Zelda series. I mean, they still do now. Like you can get the Tears of the Kingdom one in a hardcover, and Breath of the Wild and all that. But they have like that chest of a bunch of legacy titles, legacy Zelda titles, and then they have like individual ones as well. They go for like a pretty penny if you can get a copy of them. I think I have all of them at this point. But yeah, I love the way that those are laid out.
And then the second part of Tyler's question is, I love the ease of being able to find a walkthrough or guide for a game online. I greatly appreciate the work that goes into making them. But on the other hand, I miss when Nintendo specifically published physical walkthrough guides for a lot of their games. Do you guys have a preference when using a game guide, whether it's physical or electronic? It's electronic for me. I had a few walkthroughs back in the day. I remember the Wind Waker one, which was awesome because it had the whole map of the sea and every island and every heart piece. Super huge map you could spread out. But beyond that, I had one for Mario and Luigi Partners in Time on DS. I had a Sunshine one, but I was never super into physical guides. And now I just use IGN guides, and that's where I go every time. But how about you guys? Physical guides?
I mean, it depends on the game. Like Pokemon, I always thought was really good for physical, because you could like carry it around with you when you were a kid. It always came with a poster of like all the new Pokemon that were in that game. You could put it up on the wall. I remember Diddy Kong Racing. I used that to get all the coins because they were like mapped out. But today, like, you know, I just wrapped Spider-Man 2. I got the platinum in that. And watching a video in most scenarios is just so much easier when you're trying to do something like that. So yeah. I feel like Nintendo titles, though, I like to have like a physical one. I don't know why. It's like the nostalgia in me.
Yeah. They're not physical games I get anymore either.
I'm honestly kind of the opposite. Like I do like, I mainly use online guides just because of the convenience, because you can just be very specific about a topic and find guides on that quickly. But like official strategy guides back in the day used to be awesome. They would have like the first quarter to a third would be like backstory and lore and information on characters that might not be available elsewhere, and so that's really really cool. And like frankly, like if I need a guide on a specific topic and I only see videos, I'm probably just not going to use a guide. And then I'm frankly not that interested in watching YouTube videos for guides most of the time.
Yeah, I still like written more than video guides. Yeah, Chris, you're alone on that one. I've never been like, I'm going to go watch a video to see how to do this.
It's mainly like if I'm trying to get like a trophy or something. It's just easier to see in certain situations. But like, but I've also, it really depends on who's written the guide. Like there are some guides out there that are really poorly written. That I go to do whatever it is that they're telling me, and I'm like, you're not even close. You really didn't have much of that back in the day. When it was print media.
I do miss print media. I do miss manuals mostly. More than guides, it's really manuals.
Yeah.
I miss those. Yeah, I wish that there was a little one tucked in every Switch game that I get. But there's not. And you know what else there's not? More time on this podcast. That's the end of this episode of the Toadstool Boardroom. We have more questions to get to. Don't worry if you sent in an email. I have it. I'll save it, and we will get to it. But I want to give it the time that it deserves, and I don't want to keep these guys longer than we've already been here. So we're going to wrap up for this week. We're a weekly Nintendo show here on usually Thursdays, Friday this week at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you like to listen to your podcast. Justin, where can people find you online, and what are you working on?
Find me on Twitter at KOREIS. I just wrapped up a pretty meaty Destiny guide on Eurogamer about a new exotic weapon that they dropped. Other than that, I don't have any current pending projects. Frankly, I'm not trying that hard to round up any at the moment. I'm still trying to ease my way into the new year. I'm turning most of my attention towards getting prepped for PAX, though, because I'm going to be at PAX East, so I'm looking forward to that.
Chris, where can people find you and anything to talk about?
You can find me at Shrives93. I will post the video of the Fisher-Price Game Boy on the Toadstool Boardroom official Twitter account or X account. Other than that, not really much going on. Honestly, just trying to get over this cold, and then we're going to be working on the room to my left here. At some point, you're probably going to see me in a much different part of my house. It will look terrifying. It's fine. I will be in my basement, and it is not finished.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. You can find me online at Logan J. Plant. I just made an IGN playlist today of every game I plan to beat this year, and it's very daunting. It is an overwhelming amount of games that I think I'm going to find time for that I probably won't. So yeah, go check that out, and you can see the 35 games I've told myself I'm going to beat this year, in addition to everything that hasn't been announced, like the next 3D Mario and all that good stuff. Yeah, I'm delusional, but it happens every year. But you can find the show at ToadstoolBR. Send us an email, toadstoolboardroom@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Justin and Chris. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week. We'll catch you next time right here in the Toadstool Boardroom.